My talk today, I've worked in a few different startups from like 15 people all the way up to 200, most recently AirSorted at 200. AirSorted is 200 in 20 cities around 8 countries, so really spread out with only people operations in the UK. So I've picked 3 of my long list of things I wish I knew the value of earlier on. So first of all, knowledge sharing. Quite often startups think about this after Series B. And this is usually triggered by individuals who start leaving that hold a lot of knowledge within the company, and you get, but this person's leaving, how can we save them? And often the founders go, let's just throw an extra 10K on their salary and that will keep them, it might keep them for 2 months, 3 months, but is that really solving the core of the problem? So I would suggest that really you should bring knowledge sharing in, not long after you've got the founding team, and you share regularly, have weekly touch points to share the knowledge you have, and those individual meetings will save you a lot of money later on. So here are my top 3 points within that. So don't allow individuals to become overvaluable or be perceived as overvaluable, so that when you bring in an HR person, you're saying, well, I've got a flight risk here, but I don't want them to go because they know too much. And there should never be a panic when any individual leaves within a company. So that is like succession planning from, day one. You should be able to function without an individual because everyone knows how to cover each other. So that's knowledge sharing. Moving on to leadership training. So a couple of companies I've been in, they'll think about it, quite late on. And by then the damage is it's done. If young leaders don't have anyone to learn from, then it filters down, and you can't build strong leaders through that. So bringing in leadership training quite early on, it doesn't need to be extensive. It could be going to a short-term course, directing them to mentors, somewhere where they can learn how to lead a team and also develop their own skills. Identify potential leaders early on so that you can develop those leadership skills before they move into a leadership role, and then they can actually practice them when they move into that leadership role. And the training was ongoing through their employment life cycle with that company. The amount of, the requirement of their leadership skills in one position is going to change as they become more senior. I've worked in a company where the directors, underneath them, they've got managers who need support, but they can't support them because the directors can't learn from anyone above them, and it just really does filter down, which is why I've put great leadership trickles down. Great leaders make great leaders. Finally, candidate experience, which I find is what a lot of companies miss out on very early. They bring in their HR or people team and they start thinking about it when they're at 100 people. Whereas really, the first person or any person you speak to, you're representing your employer brand from day one. So everyone you speak to, you should feel as if they're your first customer. You don't know who they're going to speak to. You don't know who their mother, father is. You never know if they're going to become an employee later down the line. I know that Huckletree have actually just hired someone that they didn't hire a couple of years ago and are just hiring them now because they built that relationship. And I always bring this up with agencies. Whenever I speak to an agency, you never know when you're going to become their client. So, make that candidate experience and let that employer brand bleed through every single contact you have externally. So it's also representative of your brand and your values, and that should just come through. And my big one is hire the right people at the right time with the right skill set. Quite often I see founders wanting to hire extremely talented individuals very early on, but what you need is a more generalist at that time who's going to be hands-on, operational in the business. Otherwise you hire those top skill sets and they'll come in and want to build a team, and that's really costly in the long term. So hire the right people and explain to them, you'll take us from seed to A, but when A comes in, we need a different skill set, so you'll have someone come in above you who will lead us through A to B. So this is my absolute go-to, hire the right people at the right time. And just moving back to this one, is bringing in an HR individual. They don't need to be extremely senior early in the business, but they can have a real impact on the full employment life cycle, just if they do the right things. So yeah, that's me done. If you have any questions, drop me an email. If you want to talk more about it, we can chat later. Perfect.